All right. Looks like you're all set.
All right. Well, thank you for that introduction. We are excited to see 30 of you here today to listen to our presentation on campus and in the classroom promoting DEI through open pedagogy.
Today, we have 3 goals for our presentation. So we're hoping by the end of this presentation that you will be able to strengthen your campus efforts to stimulate open pedagogy efforts to be more diverse, equitable, and inclusive. Second, we hope that you learn strategies for integrating sociocultural diversity into renewable student-centered assessments and learning materials. Finally, we hope that you'll learn how to utilize effective strategies for implementing open access assessments that provide an inclusive experience for students.
We also want to mention that we have provided you with a QR code. If you were to scan that now, it would take you to a handout that we have that lists resources. It also provides a link to today's slideshow, and then our contact information is also available on the handout. And Christina is going to include that in the chat too. So I'm going to start today's presentation off by discussing or overviewing open pedagogy and DEI. So the first thing we wanted to make sure is that everybody's on the same page as to why it's important to incorporate DEI into open pedagogy. So what we have found as instructors and then as a librarian doing instruction, that faculty can present social justice principles by emphasizing the importance of authors, such as our students, integrating sociocultural diversity into their work. And so there are a few reasons why an instructor may make the decision to incorporate DEI. One of the main reasons comes from research that was done by Lambert in 2018, in which the researchers found that open pedagogy is a tool that provides marginalized groups an opportunity to co-construct texts and also share their stories. And what Lambert found in the research is that open pedagogy empowers students. So that's one reason we believe it's really important to incorporate DEI into open pedagogy. Another reason is because OER specifically enables students to engage with diversity. It can also prompt them to reflect upon their privilege and advance resources that are grounded in their own voices and lived experiences, particularly students that are from a marginalized population. In addition to that, we also believe that incorporating DEI into open pedagogy assignments is essential for a few additional reasons. So first of all, representation. So DEI ensures that diverse perspectives are included. And as a result, you have an environment where all voices are heard online. Additionally, we think it's important because of equity. So assignments that prioritize DEI, such as one that Kelly is going to talk about later in today's presentation, they can help address systematic inequalities and provide students with equitable opportunities to succeed. In addition, we've got critical thinking. So engaging with DEI prompts students to think critically and analyze and reflect upon social justice issues. From our own experiences, we've discovered that DEI-focused assignments, such as the exam that Kelly is going to touch on and those featured on the SUNY Fredonia OER website, foster a sense of belonging among students, and it makes their learning environment more inclusive and supportive. And then finally, we have found that real-world relevance comes from students are better able to understand the real world relevance of the work they're doing by incorporating DEI into their open pedagogy assessments. So in sum, we think that including DEI as a requirement in an open pedagogy assignment enhances learning, but it also promotes a just and more inclusive educational experience for our undergraduates. So then a couple suggestions for how this could be incorporated. One is multimedia. And so what this means is an instructor can require that students incorporate visuals that illustrate respect for culture and gender differences, for instance. They could also incorporate social justice by sharing their own narratives, such as stories that involve equity, but also gives voice to them as a marginalized population. Lambert et al. In 2008, or excuse me, just Lambert in 2008 suggests having students use their authentic voices and lived experiences when they write that accessible content, because doing so can highlight minority cultures, and it also shows a value for difference. And then finally, instructors can require that students write content from the perspective of various communities, and that they could go about finding information that's applicable and acceptable. And this is coming from research done by Diener et al. In 2017, who suggests that incorporating observable and non-observable characteristics related to demographics such as gender, race, disabilities can be used as a way to foster DEI in an open pedagogy assignment. So now I'm going to turn it over to Christina to share a little bit about her experience with creating a comprehensive campus model.
Yeah, thank you, Angela. So yeah, I just wanted to provide a little background on how we've sort of supported open education at Fredonia, and this includes some of our open pedagogy projects and the rationale behind those initiatives. So at Fredonia, we've embraced the opportunity to support open education through a variety of initiatives. We had concluded campus funding in 2020 from SUNY, but we had some supportive administration that ensured we could kind of continue moving forward with open education and supporting faculty who want to incorporate these things into their teaching. So this gave us a chance to expand beyond just OER adoption and start introducing open pedagogy across campus to faculty, and also launching a new incentive to encourage faculty to adopt these practices. So my colleague and I in the Professional Development Center have had a handful of instructors take us up on these incentives. And this included a criminal justice course where students created an open textbook, and they were examining perspectives on incarceration. We've also had other courses, including digital marketing, animation and illustration capstone, courses in writing, and a handful of others. So we're starting to see more faculty kind of embrace these practices. So in addition to professional development workshops, we've also offered opportunities to showcase student work in the library. We've provided technical support for publishing platforms like Pressbooks. And then we've offered instructional sessions in the library focusing on copyright basics, Creative Commons, so that students can be informed about the licensing of their materials. And incorporating these practices involves a lot of extra time and labor, so it really helps to provide that incentive for faculty members who are adjusting their assignments and the structure of their course to implement these practices. So we do have a QR code on the slide that'll take you to the Open Fredonia page, and this will provide access to some of the projects that have been implemented. That link is also on the resource guide that we shared a moment ago. So I also want to share a few ideas of how campus supports faculty incorporation of DEI into open pedagogy. So first and foremost, inclusive curriculum design. So developing course materials that reflect diverse perspectives, cultures, and experiences. We help faculty use open educational resources that feature authors from various backgrounds. Collaborative learning, so fostering group projects that encourage students to work with peers from different backgrounds, and this promotes teamwork and understanding of diverse viewpoints. Culturally relevant assignments, so helping faculty create assignments that allow students to explore their identities and experiences, and encouraging them to relate course content to cultural contexts. And then facilitating discussions on DEI topics. So locating resources that enable faculty to engage in discussions about social justice, equity, inclusion into the curriculum, encouraging students to engage with contemporary issues and their implications. And then professional development. So again, offering workshops, trainings on DEI topics to continuously improve instructors' understanding and implementation of inclusive practices in open pedagogy. So by implementing and integrating these practices, we really help faculty create more inclusive and equitable learning environments that benefit all students. So now Kelly's going to share an example assessment.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christina. Let's talk about the exam question assignment that I'm using in my classroom with the assistance of AI. So what I'm hoping students learn from this AI assessment is to demonstrate critical and analytical thinking through the revision and the justification of scenario-based multiple choice questions. Students will construct AI prompts to assist in the creation of effective multiple choice questions, and they will apply an accurate representation of diversity, equity, and inclusion principles through their contextual details and language usage. So how this assessment works. On our next slide, what students are going to do is create a prompt for AI to have the AI create multiple choice scenario-based questions. So there's a scenario, there's a question, and then the AI will provide the different answer choices and the answer. What students need to do then is provide a justification for whether that is the correct answer or not. And in this slide, you're going to see how a student, in this slide, you'll see how the AI created a question. And on the right-hand side, you'll see how a student revised the question to add contextual details, thinking about DEI principles and making sure that we don't have AI bias like stereotypes and biased language. We can go to the next slide then. So to ensure that students are using critical thinking, we're asking them to justify not only the answer, but then tie it back to their peer-reviewed course materials. So they need to provide the page and paragraph number of information in their textbook or Google Slides or other resources provided by the instructor to demonstrate the evidence they're using to ensure the question is correct. So here in our slide, we can see on the left-hand slide, the revised question the student wrote. And then on the bottom, we can see that they listed page 120, paragraphs 3 through 5. Now, I am using this for a lower level undergraduate course, so an introduction to psychology course. This could easily be integrated in an undergrad or graduate level course, and you could have them use APA citations. Then the next and last step, so it's a three-part process. The third part is for them to also justify using their critical thinking skills. What's the next plausible answer? So they know the correct answer, but which one is maybe a distractor and very similar to the correct answer? And then they'll justify the second last and the very last option of what they might choose in answering this question. And each time they have to go back to their course materials, provide some evidence as to why this might be the next plausible answer, and justify their rationale. So using their own critical thinking skills. The last piece of this that makes it OER is that I then take the questions. Typically, students will do this 3 times, make 3 multiple choice questions with justification, or you could expand it to 5. Then I take the questions and put those into renewable digital learning objects. For instance, I could create Google quizzes. I could use a soft chalk quiz and share that with the world through a Creative Commons license that they have. I could also use HP5 as well, which is also Creative Commonsly licensed when you provide that material to the internet. And then this allows future students to have some retrieval practice with multiple choice questions before they're arriving at the exam. So I really enjoy this assessment because it includes DEI, open pedagogy, and then is renewable for our students. And now I'll turn it over to Christina.
Yeah, so I'm going to share our contact information in the chat, but I also want to mention for future assessments similar to these, you can check out our book, Emphasizing a Student-Centered Process, Open Pedagogy Course Assessments Across Disciplines, and that's going to be published in 2025 on the Mail and Open Textbook website. So we look forward to your questions. Thank you. And then I'll share the resource document one more time in the chat as well for anyone who came in a little later.
Any questions? If you don't want to come off of mute, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll be happy to read them for you.
Hi, this is Sukunda. I do have a question for you about your students' work. Did you have to get their permission to use their work, or after they made those questions and answers and things, how did that work?
Sure. Excuse me. Yes, I typically allow students to choose whether or not I can use them moving forward. So I ask them to complete a quick Google survey with their name on it. You know, they just have to plug in, yes, you can use them, or please don't use them in the future. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Amanda put in the chat, I really like the critical thinking that the test question revision requires, especially asking them to comment on the other answers.
The other thing I would mention, and I build off of that just for a second, Amanda, is that the reason I have them go back to the textbook is not only to get them to open our textbook, but also to make sure that they're using peer-reviewed sources and kind of have a bit of a course discussion about how AI can be inaccurate, and that we really want to rely on peer-reviewed information as a source of evidence for our critical thinking and reasoning. I forgot to mention that earlier.
Oh, it looks like Amanda had a follow-up question. So that actually leads to my follow-up question. Can you review the ChatGPT component again, the part where they essentially fact check the AI?
So I think you're asking, you know, how they're using it to just construct a basic multiple choice question, and then they're checking the accuracy of the answer, and they want to make, you know, we want to make sure it's tied to also the course materials that future students are going to use as well. That's the other reason I have them go back to the course materials. But I encourage them to either use ChatGPT or Google Gemini. The reason I suggest Google Gemini is because most of them have a Google account from K through 12. So they're typically not recreating the wheel in that manner. And so they're not using AI to revise the question. They need to humanize the question with their own perspective. So their own details about time, place, names. A lot of the AI I've found usually says Sarah or Maya did this. So they're actually, the other limitation I have in that context is that it's only 4 sentences long and that it shouldn't distract the reader from the question. So there's also a challenge in critical thinking as well. Did that answer your question, Amanda?
Yeah, that's what I was going to follow up with. So basically they're taking the question that AI generates and they're expanding on it to make it more humanized. And then they're also fact checking the correct answer and explaining why this is the right answer based on peer review research. Is that right?
Yep, exactly.
That's really cool. I like this a lot.
I think you can use it in a multitude of courses, you know, anything you might use a multiple choice exam for. And the research really backs up retrieval practice. So it forces us to pull from our long-term memory and then add the new information. So it's a really effective study strategy for students. So I think it's a good way to encourage them to then also use that practice for studying.
And it's also encouraging them not just to take something off of ChatGPT and copy and paste it wholesale too.
Right. And I think they get an opportunity to see that the AI is not as creative as they are, right? It is I get really bland questions. So I think that's one of the things that maybe will change in the future, but I don't see that changing for a long time. So human creativity is still going to be very important.
Absolutely.
And that's also a spot where I think when you type the prompt into ChatGPT, you could say, make this incorporate something related to DEI. So you fill in what that something is. And then it could also help the students see, are they depending on stereotyping, or is this really promoting social justice issues? And the students might be able to revise the question that way as well.
That would be a great in-class exercise. Yeah.
Mhm.
Does anybody else have any other questions or comments they would like to speak about?
I have a question. I can't remember, Kelly. Do you then write an exam that uses these questions?
I've been just creating digital learning objects with them. I haven't incorporated them into exams yet. This is only the second I've done it. This is the second time I've used it. I have used one or two in the past, but I haven't wholesale, like I just rolled it out to bigger classes. So the first two classes, I only had one section. And so now this third time, it's multiple sections of intro to psych. So I'm really hoping to, pick a few goodies, right?
Mhm.
And I told them, have some fun with this. Put in our local town, put in, your friend's name or represent yourself, as well as other people.
Yeah, this reminds me of a colleague that would have students submit questions and
Mhm.
then that would comprise the exam.
Yeah, yep.
And so the idea is they'll hopefully be successful because they've helped write the questions. And so it'd be interesting to see if that's true in practice.
I sometimes think our students are way harder on each other than we are on them. I've seen that before, where they write really hard exam questions.
Yeah, I think that gets them a little more invested in it too, when they're the ones actually populating the question bank. That's really funny. Yeah, they dig to find that tricky question and yeah, it's funny.
Well, if anyone else has questions, but they would prefer to just email us directly, feel free to reach out to us. Our emails are provided here. I know in the handout, Kelly has also provided assignment guidelines and an assessment rubric. So feel free to check that out. You're welcome to modify that. If you do end up doing it, make sure you reach out to us and let us know how it goes. So we appreciate you attending today's presentation, and we look forward to learning from those of you that are presenting later today.
Thank you.